scope wireless endoscope that I use in my procedures, which enables us to visualize the ear and safely remove the earwax. We also train ear professionals around the world in endoscopic ear care, and if you're in the UK, please do visit our website www.clearwax.co.uk so you can find your nearest clearwax specialist. So we have a client here who attended with bilateral occluding earwax. This is the patient's right ear. The ear canal itself is quite narrow. You saw there I just pulled out a big plug of wax. She'd been using a lot of drops in her ears. I think she'd been using drops for the last 2 weeks, sodium bicarbonate drops. So the ear is very wet, very damp. There's a lot of keratin there as well as wax. And you can see I'm just gently getting a suction grip and extracting and pulling this wax forwards laterally out of the ear. So we've got 2 big lumps out there. Getting access in the ear was slightly tricky because the ear canal was slightly narrow, so I've just used the endoscope to stretch open the cartilage to widen the ear, which then allows the wax not only to come out but the instrument to go in. You can see a lot of keratin there. There's a lot of white skin, dead keratin coating the ear canal. You can see there's the eardrum. It's very wet, so a bit damp in there. That will now dry off. So there's no need for me to go near to the eardrum and suction that because it's right on the drum. It's insignificant. The patient's hearing had been alleviated. It's almost like she had gone into a swimming pool and soaked her ears for half an hour before she came. So it was very damp in there. And that's the right ear. Then the left ear is a bit more challenging. You'll see that in a moment. Here we are. So this is the patient's left ear. The ear canal again is quite narrow. Now the wax here was a lot harder. They hadn't been using drops on this side, so it's a bit firmer. So initially using a Zollner suction probe, but just at the entrance, so the wax is very lateral. Just trying to detach and retract this from and elevate this from the ear canal. It was quite stubborn. Quite often in the comments, I see people, why don't you use the ear hook or Jobson horn, or why do you always use suction? And you'll see during the procedure that I tried to use an ear hook several times with this type of wax. Just wasn't successful. So when you watch a procedure, you may think whilst watching it, why don't they use this, why don't they use that? But it's actually when you're performing the procedure, you're there, you get that kinesthetic feel, you know what's right, what's wrong. Sometimes you just try instruments even though you feel as though, okay, it may not help, but for example, suction's not really taking me any further, let's just resort to something else. I've just gone in with the ear hook. Because we're quite lateral, we can kind of try and dig into the wax. The outer third of the ear is cartilage with a fatty tissue layer with a thicker layer of skin, which measures about 1 millimeter. The inner 2/3 of the ear canal is made up of a very thin layer of skin, 0.1 millimeters, that directly coats the bone. So the bony part of the ear canal, there's no fatty tissue, so it's a lot more sensitive if you come in contact with it. So we did get a bit of wax out there with an ear hook, a few cilia, so we know we're at the entrance, and just trying to hook in behind, loosen this wax on the back of the canal wall and bring it forwards. So it's a bit glossy and white there. That's just because the wax is quite dry and hard, so you get a reflection, and also there's a few cilia there. You see the ear canal is also quite slit. It's quite narrow at the entrance, so just trying to get underneath the wax there with the hook. I think in the end I had to just use some olive oil spray, really dose the ear for about 5 minutes, and you'll see that in a moment. And I had to go back to suction in the end, because that was the only way it was going to come out. So again, just going back in with this, I felt that whilst using the ear hook I got a bit out, but I just felt that I wasn't going to be able to get much more out, so it's just gone back in with the Zollner suction probe, and you can see the wax is quite matted. So with a forceps, what do you grip onto with forceps? So you're going to have to get the bottom of the forceps, you have to literally force that in between the wax and the ear canal, and the forceps are quite sharp, it's got a sharp pointed edge, so that's going to be very uncomfortable for the patient, hence why we've not used that. If there was a bit of somewhere that we could grip onto centrally on the core of the earwax, that would be good. There's a bit there, but that's so soft, if we grip onto that with forceps, it will just tear that piece off, so hence why we haven't used forceps. See, and here the wax is a bit firmer, so if you're going to toss up between an ear hook and a Jobson horn, you'd always use an ear hook with this type of wax. So yeah, just imagine me using forceps. So I'm going to have to get, as I said, you're going to have to get the bottom jaw of the forceps, you have to glide it underneath the wax, and this edge got a sharp pointed end. Be very uncomfortable for the patient. So again, just going back in with the ear hook, trying to penetrate into the wax. It's really hard, and I'm in there, I'm just trying to come forwards and getting some wax out, but just tearing it. It wasn't a lot. So that core is really hard, and at this stage I thought we need to put some drops in. I actually think it's sodium bicarbonate drops, not olive oil. And I'm just stretching the ear open as well. Bring the ear canal up and down. You can probably see that movement, because I want this drops to seep through the wax, lubricate the ear canal wall, and by lifting and allowing the pinner, so the external ear, to go up and down, it will just widen the ear canal, provide some gaps for the drops to seep through. And we're using the drops not only to soften the surface of the wax, but almost like if you've got a ring stuck in your finger and you use some soap to lubricate it, and that's why we're also using the drops. It's a bit of lubrication so we can glide this very dry, hard piece of wax out. So again, just going to this rear bit, so there's always a bit of a blind spot in people's ear canals. It's to the rear, so for the left ear, it's to the right when you go in. And if you can loosen that, it does make the rest of the procedure a lot easier. I'm really pulling at this, tugging at it, but it is now loosening. So as I'm wriggling the wax, I'm also bringing it laterally forwards towards the entrance of the ear. So the camera here, the eye clear scope, is actually not even in the ear. I'm holding it freehand in my left hand because the wax is so lateral. And I've just got a suction grip here, and I'm just trying to tease and wiggle this wax forwards. And that's where the drops really help, is just providing some lubrication, some glide. And this is coming out now, slowly but surely. There we have it. So it's quite a big piece of wax in the end, very dry, very hard, very matted. Again, it's just getting stuck at the entrance because that's quite a narrow entrance. So just going in, it's going to mop up near the entrance with the drops, suction the excess drops. There's a tympanic membrane, all healthy. That's all the remnants of the ear. So it's 613 milligrams, 2/3 of a gram, and here's a view of the wax on the tissue. So the right side is quite soft, the left side is a bit dry and harder. Hope you enjoyed that video, guys. If you're watching on YouTube, please do subscribe to the channel, select the bell icon so you'll get notified as and when uploaded.